Well, this week, charges of corruption and fraud played a large role in the debate over the deployment of more troops to Afghanistan. President Karzai admitted to irregularities in the August election and agreed to a runoff next month. Joining me now is the director of the Institute for Public Accuracy and author Norman Solomon, who visited Kabul a week after the election in August as part of a fact-finding mission. Welcome, Norman.
Hey, thank you, Bella.
What did you find once you were there? I mean, the election was over, people were talking about it, had not been quite right, so what did you find on the ground?
I found in Kabul a city that increasingly is becoming, again, acclimated to violence. And it really struck me that here in the United States, what we know about Afghanistan, or think we know about that country, is largely the result of a filtration process through the news media, usually mass media. Through information, half information, kind of, sort of accurate information, fed by Capitol Hill and the White House and the State Department. And I saw quite a contrast when we got off the beaten track at the Institute for Public Accuracy. We organized a small delegation and we talked to officials. We went to an orphanage. We talked to UN agencies and independent journalists and Afghan ministry officials. But we also went, for instance, to a refugee camp. And to me, when we went to a place where 700 families that had been dislodged from southern Afghanistan had been living in many cases for 1 year in a very squalid facility, it's even a stretch to call it a refugee camp, in the capital of the country. And for instance, a 7-year-old girl named Guljuma, who told me about being awakened at 5 in the morning by U.S. bombs. She lost several family members and lost one of her arms. That was the last meaningful contact that she and her family had with the U.S. government.
We have some photographs from your trip there, and we'll be looking at them as we continue our conversation. But when you, even if you get to, you know, the very people that we read about from one step back, did you find that their impressions were totally different from what was being reported?
Well, I talked, for instance, to a lot of women at what we here might call a consciousness-raising group. There it was about the notion that you have human rights as a woman. You don't have to put up with being beat up in your home. You actually have a right to go out into the marketplace. And I asked them, what is most important to you? And coming back was a unanimous answer: peace. And I thought, in the United States, peace sometimes sounds kind of wispy or to some ears sort of wimpy, but to Afghanistan, people there, it really is the necessary precondition. It is literally a lifeline, and that lifeline is not present, and to the extent it has been present to some degree, it is now fraying.
Are people concerned about the election and the election process there?
Almost across the board, and I did meet with a wide range of people. There was a view that the election on August 20th was engineered and operated for the benefit of the governments and populations and PR of Western Europe and North America. And it was known at the time that the Karzai government was inept and corrupt. Now, in the wake of the first round election, it's known that it's illegitimate, and people have concerns much more concrete. For instance, the fact that the United States is spending more than 90% of our tax dollars in Afghanistan for military purposes. And so, again, to the example of the refugee camp, the families that I met were getting no help from the U.S. government, even though they were made refugees by the U.S. military actions.
Do you think people there will welcome more troops if the president should decide to send them there?
Well, the best polling says about 18% of Afghan people want more U.S. troops sent. If there's a center of gravity, I believe, and this is borne out by the conversations I had, Afghans do not want more U.S. troops. There's a lot of visceral opposition to U.S. bombing that is killing civilians. I don't think Afghans on the whole want the U.S. troops to disappear overnight, but I think they want a timetable overall.
Do you think this next election will be a fair election?
I think that's almost going to be an oxymoron, given the conditions, who is running the election, the presence of war there. It ultimately, I think, is a show election. Unfortunately, all the signs tell us, I believe, being organized and pushed by the U.S. so that after it's held, scheduled, if it is held on November 7th as planned, then there will seem to be a glide path for further escalation from the Obama administration.
What did you expect to come out of this?
Well, in terms of the visit, I hoped to find human faces, behind the statistics. And when I had read about U.S. spending ratios in Afghanistan, I thought, what is this in terms of hearts and minds? But I wanted to listen and talk to people. And frankly, I think I saw, much more even than I expected, a U.S. war effort where the wheels are coming off.
Well, the generals agree with you on that one. Thank you very much, Norman, for
Thank you.
sharing your visit to Afghanistan.